I will arise and go now, and go to Innisfree, and a small cabin build there, of clay and wattles made. 9 bean rows will I have there, a hive for the honey bee, and live alone in the bee loud glade. And I shall have some peace there, for peace comes dropping slow, dropping from the vales of the morning to where the cricket sings, their midnights all a glimmer, and noon a purple glow, and evening full of the linnet's wings. I will arise and go now, for always night and day. I hear lake water lapping with low sounds by the shore, while I stand on the roadway or on the pavements grey. I hear it in the deep heart's core.
The land and the music is very much the same. It's a deep part of Ireland and still is, and I think will be for a long time.
The land gives us sustenance for life, and the music gives us life of the soul.
You know, one thing about music is that it brings young and old together, you know, and it's a magical bond. I can see the parallels that can be drawn from, you know, having a deep love of music and a deep love of farming. It's a love of the land, it's a love of the animals.
The link, I suppose, with Irish music was then that it also was a cultural link, which was performed mostly in rural traditional homes where farming was the way of life. There was plenty of time to play music.
Whatever jobs they were doing on the farm couldn't be done when it was raining. This was an opportunity for an afternoon playing music.
It was a way of relaxing, it was a way of lifting their spirits in the evening time when the day's work would be done, and a way of entertaining their neighbours that came into the rambling house. It was just a tradition of the area, that's why it's so important to.
You go into a pub in South Sligo, and I know that the majority of people in that pub know the tunes.
Just tell me out, shipmates, that I'm taking a trip, mates, and I'll see you someday,
And there's a tremendous camaraderie between the audience and the musicians.
The tunes identify a sense of place. Particularly Sligo tunes are very dear to my heart. County Sligo is the well where the water comes from. There was a saying years ago in South Sligo that you know, in the early 20s, if you held a fiddle outside the church in Gertine, that every third person could play a tune on it, you know.
If you handed any one of them a fiddle, they'd play it.
They're making a documentary on the music of South Sligo, really.
Yeah.
And on the idea of the music being part of the story of the farming life.
Farming was the mainstay of the rural areas, particularly west of Ireland. You know, when you take from Connemara, Clare, Roscommon, Mayo, Sligo, Donegal, all that area, farming was nearly 100% the occupation of the people.
It was a hard life, I suppose, but then it was nothing too easy anyway. It was, you had to get out in the morning and milk your cows. You milked 9 or 10 cows with your hands, milk them with your hands, strain the milk with a strainer into the pails, and cool the milk. You cooled the milk. There was no modern cooling methods then. You cooled the milk usually in a spring well or a running stream. You took your can to a running stream, popped it down in a running stream, and waited for the milkman to come. The milkman came with a horse and cart. He came the road. You popped your creamery can up on the cart, and he took her to the creamery, and he took back the skim milk in the evening.
I grew up on a farm, small farm. There's 6 of us reared, 5 boys and 1 girl. You reared your own chickens, fowl. That was all turkeys for Christmas. You grew your own potatoes. It was all heavy work, but it was great work, healthy work. They had enough. They hadn't to buy you heat in the shop. They had their onions, they had their tillage, they had the oats for their cattle, and they had their own material. They hadn't to buy one heat, only flour. They were happy people then.
It was a happier time. I think it was happier. I think everybody was happy then. You'd all get together. So there was something happy about things. Maybe it was what we think that we were younger then. Maybe there was get-together. You see, if you'd journeyed to a fair, 5 or 6 neighbours would get together after the fair. Drive all your livestock together. You got together in the evening and came home again. If you didn't sell them, there was great crack going to the fair and coming home. It was a sort of a fascinating place. Every character in the country had assembled at the fair. You had every character in the country there. You had the cattle dealers in to buy the cattle. You had the tanglers, the bargain makers, making bargains on cattle. You had stuntmen would come into town doing acts. The travelling musicians would come in the evening. There was times when Johnny Dorn came to play his pipes.
The travelling pipers of the 19th century were critical to this whole thing here in South Sligo, because they were the ones that came up from Mayo and Roscommon through the Sligo territory, and they moved around at the fairs especially, and harvest gatherings, and they spent a month here and a month there, and they had the tunes with them. This style was built by John Callahan, who has lived here all his life, and he tells me he had to build the style here to mark the spot where the piper Gorman played for the dancers in the late 19th century. So that's a very direct link with the piper Gorman, who would have passed on his music, some of his tunes, to the likes of James Morrison, and before that to the Colemans and the Hunt brothers, or the Donohoe family, and all the musicians around South Sligo.
There was a travelling family used to come from Donegal. I think their names are Dohertys, as far as I know. Great group of musicians that played fiddles, played different sort of musical instruments. Very, very entertaining. They usually came in the harvest time of year to the fairs.
Take from harvest time, you had the males. They'd go round to the various houses, got round to the various farms, and they would say do the work. And in the evening time, when it would get dark, they went in to get their evening meal, and naturally enough, they might have a little bit of liquor, and that brought out the session. And from there it developed.
You get a group of 9 or 10 people, a group together, and they cut one man's corn, and they group together and they cut another man's corn. I remember there was one man down who used to have, he was a great man from Mehels, he lived down the road here. He'd get 12 or 14 men to cut his corn, and they'd cut it all on one day. Well, come midday and there'll be a meal made in this vacant house, and there'll be a good straight of drink on the job. Mugs of porter will be passed round, and the local characters would stand up giving recitations, and you give him another mug of porter, and some other fellas stand up and he'd sing a song. There was great characters around there.
My lady, your swing no more for me. We will sing one song for our little cabin home, and my little darky friends, good night.
There's another fella would take a tin whistle out of his pocket and he'd play a round of music.
Say in the 30s, 40s, 50s, it was played on the crossroads, it was played at the farmhouse dances.
There was no transport. Transport was hard to come by, and consequently people congregated in farmhouses. And that's where it kind of more or less would have maintained itself, you know. Basically that's the reason why that it was very informal, and very informal sessions were always going on there.
If we can just go back in time here, driving along this road, things wouldn't be that different, but the road is a bit better now. The greenery is the same, you know, the shrubs and the trees are probably the same. My father was a fiddle player, and my uncle was an accordion player, and they used to cycle along this road here when they were teenagers, and what they used to play at was country house dances. Now that was in those times that was the local entertainment.
About 9 or 10 musicians would be seated out here. Many of them on an old stone wall that was there. There was an old stone wall here, a piece of a stone wall. There'd be 9 or 10 there. There might be a couple of the older musicians sitting on a chair. Might be an old lady playing a melodeon. Playing like hell there all night. Dancing going on here. And in here for plenty of liquor. There was plenty of liquor on the job, and the musicians got any amount of it free.
I often drive along this road and try to picture what it was like to be cycling 2 bicycles to a country house dance after a hard day's work on the farm, you know, and then what it was like cycling back in the middle of the night, I suppose with a couple of jars on board and all that. But you know, then I just kind of relate that to what I do today, you know, and it's in a different way. I mean, I'm just after coming back from Portugal and Switzerland, and I was in America and at some festivals, and you know, travelling down a road by bus. Sometimes I often think back to my uncle and my father cycling along on 2 bikes playing for country house dances. It's no different really, is it?
as a young person, you know, when I was growing up, and there was all this music. You know, there was always music in the house. There was always musicians coming in and playing in the house, and it could happen. It wasn't always at night. It could happen any time of the day, particularly if it was raining.
A friend of mine who's in his 70s told me he used to work for a local electricity company, and one of his jobs was to drive to the southern part of the county, and that it wouldn't be unusual that they would stop the truck outside our house and go in and play sessions for the day, and work would be forgotten. I don't know whether his bosses ever knew this, but I mean, this was definitely going on, you know, and that poaching was available too.
That would attract the neighbours in, you see. If there was few people who could play music in a house, you see, the other ones come in, you see, and then they'd share to dance, and that's how it worked. It used to be a regular dance. The door of the house then was hung on a thing like a buck on, you see. You know, I don't know what you ever heard tell the word here, and they could lift it off, you see. Well, there was some of them then could step dance then, you see, and they go off this door. Now this would be Shannon was dancing, you see, and they'd lay down the door, and this man would dance on the door.
Door dancing.
Door dancing, aye.
When 1846 and 47 came, when the potatoes failed and the blight came, they starved in their millions. And that's where immigration started right from heaven. 1 million fled the country in 1848. Another million died to starvation and disease. And 2 million more, from about 1849 to about 1921, left the country. By 1921, this country was down to a population again of 4 million people.
It was desperate conditions, and if you're poor and if you're suffering, the house dance is the last thing in your mind. So it put an end in a purely physical way to the house dances and to camaraderie and to more frequent gatherings. So that the famine was a cataclysmic, you know, such a catastrophe that it affected all parts of Ireland in one way or another.
This area suffered very, very severe casualties in the famine. It was one of the worst areas in the country for deaths. After that, you had immigration to America, you had immigration to England, right up to the 80s. There's more connections in America and England from this area than there is at home. Like, you have more relatives, more visitors. So that is sort of the history of the area, and that is why we had from this area that had such an influence on the traditional arts both in England and America.
We're here overlooking Sligo Harbour, and the channel there, 5 miles from Sligo town out to Ross's Point. The Metal Man, the lighthouse at the edge of Sligo Harbour, pointing the way to the channel, and that is the direct route to America. Now, especially in the age of steam, the steamships went from here to Groseal. In the time of the famine, we know that 27 ships landed in Groseal directly from Sligo.
I learned a lot from Michael Coleman. He was a young fellow when he immigrated to the United States, to New York. He made records, the old 78 records. They came home to Ireland, and in fact they were the one single factor, I think, that sparked again the new flame to keep Irish music alive in our time. He was like a link between the distant past and the present and the future, you know. He learned his music from the great pipers, the great travelling pipers that used to come through in his time when he was here. And he could transfer onto the fiddle the variations in the sound and the expression of music as it was taken from the uilleann pipes, like the great Johnny Gorman, the blind piper, and Johnny Price and them people.
Michael Coleman was one of the very famous musicians at the turn of the 20th century, in the late 1800s, beginning of the 1900s. Michael immigrated to America in 1914 and became one of the first musicians to be recorded on the old 78s. So in a period from the 1920s to about 38, he made something like 80 commercial recordings. Those in turn filtered back to Ireland by the people coming on holidays. They took the gramophones over, and they were a marvel for the people of that time that you could go into a house and hear Michael Coleman, who was in America, playing his music in Ireland. So the way he played it and the way he developed it had a major influence on the development of the music in South Sligo, if not in the whole of the world, in traditional music.
Well, I think it was quite extraordinary, because I suppose if they hadn't to leave and go and be recorded, I don't think that the strength of the music in the Sligo area would ever have been as strong. We'd have lost that great, that extraordinary style of music. We would have lost a lot of it, because we wouldn't have heard it. A lot of the generations coming along, because there was no way at all of recordings here at home. Like, a lot of those good recordings were brought back from America by people here, like Morrison and Coleman and all, McKenna's. They were brought back in the 30s. They were played on the old gramophones, and our musicians picked them up from that, you know. They picked up the styles as well. It was actually carried on from there.
Many a night the Coleman brothers came here to play at Curley's. They were great friends of Curley. Curley taught Michael Coleman many of his tunes. In fact, it was here he was supposed to have let and find titles for two of his most famous tunes, Bonnie Kate and Ginny's Chickens. This is a spot. Bonnie Kate was Curley's daughter, according to the story. Kate was a little gettle round the floor after the chickens. That's how the title of that was supposed to come about. It became a famous title out of the place, Bonnie Kate and Ginny's Chickens. Still a very popular tune. It's supposed to have its origins here in this place.
I was only a youngster and I used to learn every tune. Coleman used to play until he went away. Well, I could do every one of them with him. And there was no one could best me. He says, "You're as good as any player I ever played with," he said to me. But he said, you have the same rhythm.
Coleman left an example in fiddle playing down for the best of the man that can. They admitted the best of all those top men that's here. Coleman had something that nobody had ever had. And he still can't be beaten in what he done. You can beat him in technical, mechanical, you can beat him anyway.
Yeah, we erected a memorial to Michael Coleman in 1974. So we put on it, born near the spot, 1892, you see. Died in exile, 1945. Well, Jesus, his people went mad, out of their mind. Oh, jeez, they came here to the house, knocking on the door. What do you mean by exile? How dare you say that our father died in exile? What do you mean? But an exile is a man who is forced through no fault of his own, because he has nothing here to board the immigrant ship, whether he likes it or not. And thousands of men like Coleman were. Coleman now, of course, was asked about this, and he wouldn't admit it, you know. He said no, he says, I prefer to go to America because I was adventurous. He was no criminal. He wasn't forced out of his country, say he was. Yes. No, he died in the country of his adoption, you see. He didn't adopt, I says, America. I says, he didn't adopt any country, says I. If he could have a job here, says I, and if he could have lived here, I'm sure the vast majority of them, says I, would have stayed. Because no man has to leave his own country, says I. The majority at least, I said, unless he has to. So they went away, but they didn't like it. And said, you take that name off. We resent it. Still here.
All right, good cows. Good cows. Now pets. Now pets. Probably the biggest effect was the introduction of transport, the motor car, and the commercialisation of entertainment, which was the dance halls, and the transport to get there, and the bigger venues, and of course radio as well, which introduced modern music.
There was no televisions, there was no radios or anything in my youth. I remember the first radio coming to the locality. It came from America, in fact. And in a country place down the road, it was a family named Healy's, Owen Healy. His sister was in America, and she sent home this. And there could be 200 people, it was Sunday, in the garden outside, on a bit of a lawn outside. He'd bring it out and put it on the window, listening to the football matches.
We got more of a chance for music because we've got television and radio now in every house. And what we called, when we were young, we called a Ramblin' House. Well, I went to my neighbour's house. My neighbour came to this house, and we all had a round of music. Mostly tin whistles and bowruns now. Well, when you go to any house now, there's television and you're watching that box all night, you know.
Well, the dances that I remember was very near the end of the era of country house dances, because of course the dance halls had taken over and they were the big attraction. The reason the dance halls succeeded was they could accommodate a big crowd, and they developed at the time the transport became available, motor cars and buses, whereas the country house dances were all supported by people who lived within a mile or two of the venue or where the dance took place.
The reality was that you had the country house dances and all that, and the farmhouse session scene disappeared because with the onset of television and all of that, you know, people didn't nearly want people coming into their houses, you know, and so it more or less changed the way of people lived.
Well, of course, the dance halls took over from the country house dance. That was the reason for the demise of the country house dance, really.
We're standing here in front of the old Kelly House in Calaveral. This is an old building. I think it was first constructed in the mid-1800s. It was built as a thatched house for the Anderson family, who were school teachers in Calaveral. You get the place over to the local curate for a music house. And the local curate had the walls inside removed, and he converted it into a Kelly house in 1957. You see the plaque on the wall there behind me. Many fine sessions of music were held there. The music institutions of the country played music there. I remember many great nights there. There was famous concerts. People came from all over. People that later years became famous for their appearances on television and radio, of course.
When Sean O'Reilly started his revival in the 50s, and they were using drum kits behind traditional musicians with a piano accompaniment, which is known as Kelly bands, you know.
In O'Reilly's opinion, there was no future for traditional music unless you could get it across to the public, which wouldn't be a dancing public. In other words, that it would be a sedentary audience. Then that something less offensive than the set of drums would have to be found, and the piano was obviously out. See? So he was then seduced into believing that the humble bowron, or the goatskin drum, and the simple bones would provide the acceptable level of percussion, which wouldn't be intrusive.
I wasn't just as impressed with some of the things he'd done with the music, like, you know, especially in I think that well, the chieftains would have derived from his way of music, and you know, to a point, it's fine, you know. Chieftains has done an enormous amount for Irish music. There's no doubt about that. But again, when you sometimes go back to the purity of it, you know, and other things, again, you take away from that. He began to chop and change the structure of the tunes, and you know, put other instrumental effects through it and things like that.
Since Sean O'Reilly started Cool and started this revolutionary type of movement in traditional Irish music, and it emerged to the outside world with the Bothy band and with the chieftains especially. Sean O'Reilly that started it and made it even more known to urban people in Ireland. But to the ordinary rural people, it was always known for hundreds of years.
The music was taken from the kitchen and the snug onto the concert stage. There's been a great acceptance of Irish music in the cities because it's a worldwide phenomenon. There was no acceptance of Irish music, certainly in the pubs, in the built-up areas a couple of generations ago. And in some cases it was no musicians welcome. So that's changed. That pubs now will happily have musicians, and they're happy to pay musicians on an occasional basis.
Some of the groups now that are like Stockton's Wing now, for instance, and they start off very slow and they build it up, build it up, build it up. And finally they're passing themselves out, you know, and I think that's gone away from what I call tradition. My idea of tradition will be where fellas came together in a country house around the fire and they talked and they played at an arm. What a fella could step out and dance, you know. There'd be some fella there that could do a bit of dancing, or a woman probably. And you don't, when step dancers go out to dance, you don't start them off that they're barely lifting their feet and have them in a way that they're not able to keep up with it in the wind up.
It's a set dance revival, it's not river dance, I think. There was a great set dance revival in the last 10 years. Everybody done the set dancing, and of course you have to play real fast for the set dancing because they think you're no good otherwise, so, you know. And that's where it's coming from.
Well, the whole thing about the fast music is the set dancing that got that ripped into that crack, you know, because if you didn't play it at a fairly lively speed for the dancers, you wouldn't be a good musician, you know. And music definitely is destroyed by speed. It's absolutely in certain cases destroyed by speed. There's a certain amount of people can do that, mechanical, technical material in speed. But there's a nice, you get the American fiddlers. They won't play at speed at all. They give the tune justice by their music. They put the feeling into the tune. You can't put feeling into a tune and driving at 100 miles an hour. The limit is only 50.
River dance never appealed to me at all. I don't know why. It just isn't my thing. Most fiddle players today can as regards speaking now technically, can do a lot more things with the fiddle than say what my father used to do. But then it seems to be it's a different style of doing it. But for one thing, it's faster, which sometimes is not the best thing. I feel that when the traditional music is played very fast, as it is sometimes, it loses something. You know, from having listened to, say, musicians back, say, from my father's time and people his age and that, I think there was more coming from what they were doing.
Some of it I'm not too happy with, be honest about it. We have some who have taken over for commercial purposes, adding a bit of the sort of a modern jazz touch to it, which is in which I don't. Well, I don't like it. They're going away from the tradition. On the other hand, we have a lot of great young players who play the music out as it should be played, with no great variations in it. Nice to listen to. But when you, as I said about the commercial end of it, when you get those that take one of those old tunes, such was played by Coleman and Morrison and those, and put their own interpretation on it, and what's called the upbeat, modern trend, which is hard to recognise the tune, well then that's, for me, that's really poison. That's simple as that.
I still love to hear a good traditional player. They're so perfect and technical now, as I don't like a lot of what they're doing. I don't like too much mechanical material. It's all a show business. Traditional music is not there now. Traditional music is completely, to me, fading away. It's technical, mechanical stuff now. That time there's a grand freedom of the bow and freedom of the fingers. Very few traditional fiddlers left in this island at the moment. I never could play timples, to be honest with you.
It's more or less putting the small man out, that sort of way. It's kind of going in now to the bigger stuff, you know.
We're back in the EEC and things have changed.
Since we joined the EEC, the farming scene has changed. Many of the farmers are part-time farmers now in this area. They have a day job and they do the farming in the morning or the evenings, or some of the children do the farming, or whoever is available to look after the stock.
I suppose like happens to a lot of families, as people are grown up and everybody goes away and does their own thing, and there's nobody left at home, and so who does the farming? Mm-hmm. So the farm was sold.
When the wife died, I said, that's my end of my farming.
There's a lot of farms that have never been willed, you know, and it causes great problems. The siblings are claiming rights to it and everything like that. And in many cases the farm has to be put for sale and divided in situations like that.
It's just the whole governmental system of the Western world is inclined towards, for the last number of years, is inclined towards centralisation, towards standardisation, all that sort of thing. And they believe that the role of the local community, or the local rural community, has no longer any relevance in this modern world, you know.
The majority of people living in an urban setup have a rural background. That was the traditional way of things in Ireland. Now that's changing because of the changing profile of the population. You know, you have more immigrants today, and you have more and more people who have been born in the cities and have grown up in the cities who are losing or have lost contact, I suppose, with the rural connection.
But in the normal, everyday meetings, they're not actually meeting them on the road because they're travelling in cars. They don't meet people along the road, which was a normal occurrence, we say 30, 40 years ago. You met people along the road, you were able to talk, you met them and you knew what was happening in an area. And that exclusion is kind of more or less affecting an awful lot of people.
Years ago you could leave your door open and welcome anyone into the house, but nowadays it's not safe to leave, to leave your door open. That's just the way it has changed.
The young people are faced, with the alternative, naturally the world of phenomenon of modern music. So it's the world of the disco. They come around to, I think, an appreciation of Irish music later on maybe in life. The older musicians are still looked up to. They're the vehicles of transmission.
Judging from the number of youngsters who are learning to play music. And they're not just learning to play a fiddle, they're learning to play 5 or 6 instruments. There are very, very few learning by ear. Now, I've taught music for the last 20 years. I've tried teaching kids by ear, because I do feel there's a thing about learning by ear and learning by note. You learn by note. You will always play that exactly as you learned it from those notes. You learn by ear. You pick it up from somebody else, but you never pick it up exactly as that person played it. You play something different along the way in it. And that to me is more traditional to do that. But there are most children now. They learn from notes.
I know when I was growing up, there was very, very few people teaching the music. It may have been passed on in through maybe from father or mother down to son or daughter, whatever, in the home or otherwise, or maybe from pass it on to a neighbour or something like that. But there was no formal classes. Today, that has all changed, and in every town, there isn't a town within the country but has a number of teachers teaching different instruments. And as a result, you have, and it's even happening through the school system, which is great. Department of Education are promoting it as well, which is very good. And as a result, you have a huge level increase in the number of young people learning music.
Well, Sean and Donald, how are you doing?
Well,
are you coming in to play a few tunes with me?
Yeah.
Very good. Come on in.
With an overhead kick on 20, so that would yourself, honestly, was the
listen here to the match. The Leash was winning there by 3 points, I know.
Not too bad. Think
a good match now.
Back?
Well,
do you think will come
back? They might. I mean, now the second half is coming up. Well, how are you keeping anyway?
Oh, not bad.
How are the summer holidays going?
Good.
Coming to an end though, is that right?
Yeah, back to school.
When is the school opening then?
September 1st.
1st of September, oh yeah. Well, you get the All-Ireland flying before that anyway.
Yeah.
Are you looking forward to that?
Yeah.
Very good. I should know that you came down, so we might have a few old tunes and see how you got on them over the copper plates and 2 plates. We must give another run over them anyway.
It's extremely good for education. It's what Colthus has been very proud of, the level of classes. I mean, if you have a competition in the summertime, that's only reflective of the teaching that's gone on all through the year. And there are now hundreds of classes being held in country halls, and sometimes in country kitchens, all through the year. And whether it's a matter of county pride, if a young person can attain county championship level, provincial level, and then the All-Ireland level. So I think an awful lot of our very best musicians today, you know, they certainly value the title, the All-Ireland holder of a certain instrument.
The session is what's part of the traditional music scene these days. It's the heart of traditional music. Public houses came into Ireland, like they were kind of replaced the country house dances and the country house gatherings, and it's where people gather for sessions, and it's a huge social thing. I've met an awful lot of people through sessions and through musical gatherings. Some of the best friends I've ever met have been through music. I suppose I'm very lucky in that regard.
A lot of us have picked up our tunes from in music sessions. You know, you're playing a music session. There always comes up a tune that you don't have.
I'd say you're coming to have a more professional musician at the moment. So it's more in centres like this, in the local pubs, at concerts in community centres, that type of thing, that the music is played now.
Well, I think that from once you start paying musicians, you take away the impromptuousness about the session. Like, you know, we say you arrange a session there, you could have 5 musicians, you could have 15 musicians, but if the idea that 3 of the musicians are being paid, well, you're going to lose the other 9 or 10 or whatever is there, you know. So that concept changes the whole feature about what the session is, which should be an impromptu setting of musicians playing, and all playing for the love of it, the interest, the admiration of it, you know. Introducing money damages that, you know, from once you do.
The best in sessions are ones that just happen when a few people come together and just call each other and say, look at what are you doing, type thing, and that happens quite a lot still.
Come on, Francie. Hi, Francie. Are you going to join the team?
Come on, Francie. You got the yoke there. Pat's on his way. 1, 2, 3.
the serious musicians who have established long-term career out of this are very in touch with the past. You know, it's very important. It's a vocation to most of them, and I think it's very important that you know, it's the wheel keeps turning, and you have to keep traditional music developing, but you can't interfere with the fundamental nature of the music. It's like, I always think, you know, that we're kind of, you know, you can't interfere with somebody's painting. The music that's passed on with you have to cherish, and I know that my colleagues and we cherish the music that's passed on to us, and it's important to us. We've never changed the music or interfere with the fundamental nature of the tune.
We have to look forward, way back. We have to look way into the future, to generations probably unborn. You know, what was passed on to us, we have to pass on something to them. They have a right to that. The majority of the people, they don't seem to think that maybe future generations will probably look back on our generation.
Traditional music, you know, grows up with you. You know, it's passed on to you, and then you pass it on further. And I think we all have a responsibility to pass on the music, you know, the same way as land is passed on in Ireland from family to family, you know, from generation to generation. The land and the music is very much the same.
If you haven't the tone, you have nothing.
When I hear Coleman's music, if you close your eyes, a whole new world, a past world, an old world opens up, and you can look back. It helps you to understand what the old world was like. And that's the message.
Play the geese in the bog. The geese in the bog. It's not on, is it? It's the best you'll get tonight.